So lately, I've noticed a lot of people online sharing a lot of struggles, whether it's, finding a job or making ends meet or just feeling stuck in tough situations. And it got me thinking about my own journey and the lessons I've learned along the way. So I want to share some strategies that I'd consider if I found myself in a tough spot financially. I do want to say that these are ideas that I've either implemented myself or seriously considered for myself already, and I hope that sharing these will help broaden your perspective on what's possible. Now, let's start with jobs. Firstly, if your job has let you go, or you can't seem to secure another one, I want to let you know that I do feel for you. I have also been laid off, and I have also been someone who was unable to find another job. And I want you to know that rejection is redirection. The job letting you go or not hiring you is not a reflection on you. You are a wonderful person. You know how to do your job and you know how to be great at it. But these jobs don't care about people. And you being rejected just means that you're being redirected somewhere else. I also do want to mention that these ideas that I'm going to share with you from here on out, you can feel free to start with whichever one is, either easier or quicker to improve your situation. You can always explore the other options later, but I would suggest going with whatever is easier or with whatever is quicker. So, if you're struggling to find work in your field, I want to ask you a few questions. Have you considered applying to jobs out of your field or jobs that aren't what you'd typically do? We are way more versatile than we realize. And as someone who is pretty much thought of as a dainty princess, I never thought I'd work, in a factory doing fairly hard labor, right, on the factory line. And no one else really thought I would do something like that either. But I did. And I was actually decent at it. And it opened up, a bunch of new possibilities for me. So considering something outside of your field may open possibilities for you as well. Another question I have is, have you tried applying to jobs in another location? So in another, city or parish or province or state. I understand that, a job in your city is best. It's certainly easier. But you may be able to get more money if you go further out, especially if you can get a job, out of your province or state, and then you can move out there as well. And have you tried applying for jobs out of your country? So no matter what country you're in, I'm firmly of the opinion that you do have options in this area. So for example, you could teach in another country, or you could do those workaway programs where, you live on premises. In fact, I actually know people who moved here to Jamaica and did this, and they were paid pretty well. And there are also people, here from Jamaica who go to other countries and they do the same thing. So in my case, as I mentioned, I did apply for jobs outside of my field. I also did move out of my province, and now I'm not even in the same country. So I want you to know that I'm not suggesting these things on a whim. I do understand that these decisions aren't always easy, but I really want the best for you, and I'm hoping that something I mention will be helpful. So moving on to housing. Housing is often our largest expense, but there are ways to reduce the burden, right? So in terms of things you can consider, I'm just going to list some things off. Have you thought about, as I mentioned, moving to another city or province or state that has a lower cost of living? If the cost of living is cheaper elsewhere, then likely if you have some savings, they will go further in that place, and then you can relax a little bit. Or you can sell stuff before you move and you might be okay for a while. Have you considered exploring jobs that offer housing as part of the package? So I'm talking things like maybe working on a small farm, or working in a national park, or working on resorts, or being, a live-in maid or nanny. Have you considered moving out of your country? Can you move somewhere with lower cost of living or more jobs. So in order to live in another country, you just need residency, not citizenship. And you can get residency in other countries in various ways. My suggestion here would actually be to get residency in a country with lower cost of living than yours, because then the money that you have will go a lot further, right? And when that's happening, you'll be able to relax a little bit, and then you can look for an online job, unless you're moving to that country for a specific job. Otherwise, as I mentioned, you could potentially move to another country and do something like an international workaway program. And the last option I'm going to offer here in this housing category is house sitting. So this is where you go to someone else's house and you watch it while they are on vacation or traveling. So some people like doing this, and some people want house sitters because they have pets, or they just want to deter anyone from breaking in, right? Like thinking it's an empty home, the owners are on vacation, and breaking into it. If they see someone living in the home or see, lights on and someone there, it's less likely that that's going to happen. Now with house sitting, you may not get paid much, if at all, but it can be a way to secure free shelter for a while and give you a chance to just breathe. So there are various ways to do this. You can use a site like Trusted House Sitters to set that up, or you could always create like ads or like a service or something on Facebook Marketplace or on your country's classified site. So Stephanie Perry gives more information about this, so I'd recommend checking out her channel. Although her channel is specifically targeted towards Black women and our experience in the world, anyone can watch, right? It is YouTube. Anyone can watch anything. So I would still suggest checking her out because she gives some really good information on that. Now, let's talk about cutting expenses. So food is usually one of the largest, if not the largest expense for many people, like outside of housing, especially with all this greedflation going on. So you could reduce this expense by reaching out to food banks. If you don't have those in your area or aren't able to qualify, you could also always reach out to churches and Sikh temples. In fact, I think any organized religion in your area would probably be willing to offer you free food. You might have to listen to something that you're not interested in, right? But they could still help provide you with some perishables or at least a regular meal. Now, if you do have some funds to buy food, it does help to buy staple items, which are just items that are more filling and last longer. So think of things like oats, rice, beans. You can usually buy a bigger bag of those things and it can be fairly cheap or cheaper and last a while. And you can always learn some new recipes to spice things up, right? For example, in my case, I had stopped buying bread for a while, and instead I learned to make oat tortillas because it was way more cost effective and it was also fairly quick to make. The next fairly large expense a lot of us have is a car. Even if you own it, between the gas and the insurance and the maintenance, things can start getting kind of pricey. So, when it comes to thinking about your car and cutting those type of expenses, could you sell it and maybe use local transit? Now, if you can't sell your car or don't want to, would you consider the option to live in it? I actually wanted to live in a car at one point, more like a van or bus. I don't know if you've heard of those tiny home on wheels. It's more like a more portable and extravagant RV, but they were very expensive in Canada when I looked into it. So I considered us, my husband and I, living in a car, and I even spoke with him about it. Now, living in a car would have drastically reduced our expenses, right? Like, we probably could have still lived in Canada if we chose to live in our car. And our car was like an SUV type vehicle, so it would have been a bit easier to live in. So we did consider it. Now, although we chose to move to another country instead of living in our car, I do want to let you know that living in a car is something that you can do successfully, right? And there are many more resources and videos on it now than there were before. Another way to reduce your expenses is by reducing your bills. So this can be things like turning down the heat or AC, using less lighting, canceling all your subscriptions, negotiating with your service providers, or just shopping for new ones, calling your credit card company to reduce any payments, having, only Wi-Fi or only data, stuff like that. Speaking of phone services, I do want to mention, if you need the barest minimum, like send and receive text only on Wi-Fi minimum, I'd recommend using Number Barn. This is not sponsored. This is actually the service that I use. So I can keep my Canadian number active and receive and send text, and it only costs like less than $3 Canadian a month. That is very cheap. So definitely feel free to check them out if this is something that'll work for you. The last option I'm going to mention here is if you have a young child and you are paying for daycare, could you consider keeping the child home and canceling the care, or asking the daycare center if you can pay less and still reserve the spot? So depending on where you are, daycare can be very expensive. And I know that if I had a child, this is probably something that I'd seriously consider, at least to help reduce the amount of expenses for a while. Lastly, I want to touch on some ways to generate income, because when you're going through a tough time financially, money is what you need. So I want to touch on this a little bit. So one way that you can generate some income is by renting spaces of your home or property, or renting items that you own. So this can be like your driveway, your garage space, your basement, a shed, a piece of your land. People can rent these spaces for storage or studio space or just to park. You can rent your TV. If you have, any nice seasonal pieces or furniture in your home, you can rent that out during the appropriate season. You can rent out part of your home or rent out the entire home. I know people who have rented out the main floor of their home and then they live in the basement. In terms of myself, Hubby Bear and I decided that we would rent our whole home. So you can do what's best for you here. Next is that you can sell your personal items on places like Facebook Marketplace, Facebook groups for your city, and in your country's classifieds website. When facing these types of financial challenges, it is a fantastic time to clean out our closets or basement or storage. There are probably things that you haven't touched or worn in months, and those are great things to start with. And you might end up making a lot more than you think. So when I was selling my stuff, because we sold a lot of our stuff, I actually had to look up a YouTube video about how to do that because I felt so attached. And the YouTuber I watched was very helpful. She said, if I look at something and it's not a hell yeah, it's a no. Let it go. I should be surrounding myself only with things that make me feel good, which is a really nice philosophy to live by. And I think by the time I was done selling my stuff, I made like $4,000 or something. It was like a good chunk of change. So look at all the stuff that you have. And if you're not feeling a hell yeah when you look at it, just let it go. Surround yourself, only with things that you love and that make you feel good, and make some money in the process. So some other ways to generate income are, if you own your home, and especially if you have a mortgage, selling your home. I mean, as I said, you could rent it out like I do. Not everyone wants that though. But selling your home could give you a real nice chunk of change, so at least you can feel, a bit of relief while you figure everything else out. And lastly, you can start a business. You have an abundance of skills, and if you can use those skills to benefit someone else, you can absolutely do it for yourself. And contrary to what people think, you don't need much to start a business, at least not now. Right? Like there are so many free ways to start, especially if it's an online business. I think the biggest things, you'd need to look into are marketing and selling. So when you're thinking about starting a business, a good place to start is to think about when people ask you, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that specific thing that you do? That there can give you a very good idea about where there's a need, either for information, so you're teaching, or product, where you're selling, or service that you're providing. Now, the very last thing I want to mention here is tapping into your community. Going through these tough times can feel very overwhelming, but you're not alone, even if you don't have a typical support system. So if you don't have a support system, honestly, I'd recommend reaching out to people in Facebook groups, TikTok, on Reddit, and I mean specifically, make a post about your situation, that you are struggling and that you need help. Many people are kinder than you'd think. I have personally seen plenty of posts on like Facebook and Reddit of people asking for help. Like they are asking for advice on how to navigate their challenging situation, or resources they can tap into, or like where they can get food or housing. And I have watched complete strangers be so kind. One time I saw that someone, it was in New York, they were stuck in a car and they made a post on Reddit, I think. They thought they were like gonna die in their car or something, and someone saw their post, reached out, walked all the way out there to help them in the snow and brought them back. Like, people are a lot kinder than you'd think. So, all the people that I saw online who reached out, many of them, I think if almost not all of them, did get some sort of resource to help them, or people actually going out of their way to help them. Now, if you do have caring friends or family, I would recommend tapping into those resources. Something I've been learning in life right now is that closed mouths don't get fed. Meaning, if I don't voice my struggles or concerns, people aren't going to know, right? They're not in my head. It's the same concept here. Your family and friends won't know you need help unless you tell them. I've had very kind family members and friends allow me to stay in their homes and feed me when I needed a place to stay, and I'm so grateful for them. So if you have a community, tap into them. And if you don't, reach out. You don't have to do life alone. You really don't. Even reach out here, right? Leave a comment, let people know, give someone a chance to reply. So I hope this video has given you some new ideas and reassurance that there are options available to you regardless of your financial situation. I believe in you and that you have the strength to overcome whatever challenges come your way. And I know that's true because you've already made it through so many, right? And you're still here. So I hope this helped. And if you did find this video helpful, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to, like and subscribe for more content like this. And again, feel free to leave a comment to let us know that you need help. Let your community know, wherever they are, the online community. We're all quite connected now. So just letting someone know that you need help. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.